The opposition shares one unshakable belief. MPs blame Stephen Harper for the crisis.
It's December 4th, 2008, and the opposition is outraged. And so is Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He's gambling that Canadians are too.
On my advice, the Governor-General has agreed to prorogue Parliament.
In a surprising move, Liberal leader Stéphane Dion wants to replace him as Prime Minister without an election. Dion and the opposition parties are counting on Canadians' outrage as well. Outrage over the government's restrained response to the 2008 economic crisis. There was plenty of outrage to go around in 2008.
The problem is getting more and more serious. Mr. Speaker.
Liberals, NDP, and the Bloc Québécois were planning to bring down the government on a matter of confidence, and instead of plunging the country back into another election, had agreed to a coalition government, with Dion as Prime Minister.
From Liberals and New Democrats alike.
Only months before, Harper's Conservatives emerged from an election with the most seats, but stopped short of securing a majority. Liberal Dion came in a distant second, leading a caucus of just 77 members, compared to Harper's Conservatives with 143. So how is it possible that the second-place finisher was now about to become Prime Minister? And how could the party that won the most seats in an election almost lose the ability to form government? Let's find out. Welcome to the Delphic Academy. Canadians are soon heading to the polls to elect a new parliament, and through that, a new government. If there's no clear majority after the election, who becomes Prime Minister will come down to two things. Is it clear who can command a majority of support within the House of Commons? And if not, has the current Prime Minister offered up his resignation? When a party wins a clear majority of the seats in the House of Commons, the matter is quite straightforward. We have a pretty clear idea of who will have the confidence of the House of Commons. If the winner of that election is the leader of another party, the current Prime Minister will advise the Governor-General to name that person as the Prime Minister designate, who will be called on to form a new government. But in minority parliament situations, this is not straightforward. What would happen if the Prime Minister not only failed to secure a majority, but won fewer seats than the leader of a different party? What if the leader of the party with the most seats isn't able to make a convincing argument that they could withstand a test of confidence in the House of Commons? Tradition dictates that the incumbent Prime Minister has the right to meet the House first. After all, the Prime Minister is still the Prime Minister until they aren't. And if the Prime Minister hasn't resigned, or if a new one hasn't been designated by the Governor-General, they will retain all the prerogatives of the role, including the right to meet the House. That means that the incumbent Prime Minister could seek the confidence of the House of Commons, even if another party wins more seats. This would rely on some level of support committed from members of one or more of the other parties. And sometimes another election can be necessary in order to break the logjam. So imagine that the election returns a minority parliament, but the Liberals actually come in second place. Imagine as well that the first place party has no natural allies in the House of Commons, and thus faces a real risk that it could be defeated in its first confidence vote. Trudeau, as Prime Minister, could take a gamble and decide to meet the House instead. Yes, it is true that he would need to rely on the support from members of Parliament of other parties for his government to survive. Doing so could lead to a formal coalition or expressions of tacit support for him. Or it could simply mean that enough members from the other parties refrain from defeating the government, possibly because they want to avoid the possibility of another election campaign. Thanks for joining us here on the Delphic Academy.